So, Dr. Bridle, I really enjoyed meeting you recently, and wanted to get you on the show. And here you are. I want to start off with talking about a very successful project that you completed about finding new treatments for osteosarcoma. This is the cancer that killed Terry Fox. When I was researching you, I found this, and I was very intrigued by it. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about this research that you did.
Yeah. So, Leighton, that's an interesting area of research that I was doing, and actually, it addresses something very important. Uh, there's this piece of misinformation that's being propagated by uh, legacy media. Uh, I recently attended an event and spoke at an event in Calgary, right, just
Hmm.
a week and a half
Injection of
ago.
truth. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, the event, yeah, that event, an injection of truth, and it was quite interesting because legacy media went right off the rocker on that, right? Got so
They sure
emotionally
did.
triggered.
Yeah.
Uh, but one of the things that was interesting is the only thing that they seemed to be able to come up with, that to use quotes against me, was the fact that I mean, some of your legacy media there in Alberta actually outright stated that I'm a veterinarian, and I'm
Yeah.
not. I don't
Yeah.
have my Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree. I can't be a veterinarian. And in fact, my training, as you noted, is at a much higher level than that, right? That
Hmm.
the MD and DVM represent uh, professional undergraduate degrees, and I
Yeah,
actually
you're a
have
professor of
my.
immunology.
That's
You're
right. I actually
Yeah.
teach health professionals. I teach
Hmm.
vaccinology and virology and immunology and cancer biology to the health professionals. And so this project that you brought up really highlights nicely, I think, where a lot of this confusion comes from, because I am located at the Ontario Veterinary College. And this is what a lot of you don't realize. When it comes to so called human centered or human focused medical research, the majority of that research is actually what I often jokingly refer to as it falls under the realm of verminology. And I sometimes jokingly refer to it as that because what a lot of people don't realize is over 97% of human focused biomedical research is actually done using rat and mouse models.
Really?
And in fact, when you think about it, when it comes to animal modeling, veterinary college is an ideal place to be when it
Hmm.
deals with when you think about working with any kind of animals, especially in the area of cancer research. That is the area where there is by far the highest failure rate for every when it comes to the translation of promising cancer therapies in what we call our preclinical models. So again, that would normally be mice and rats where that research is beginning. And then people would traditionally take these gigantic leaps from mice and rats to humans, to go
Right.
into human clinical trials. And for every 20 cancer focused clinical trials that were run, at least 19 would fail to yield anything at the end of these clinical trials that was useful for the human population.
Wow.
And people have to understand this human clinical trial pipeline is incredibly expensive. It costs tens of millions of dollars to navigate right through to the end of a phase 3 clinical trial. And and yet there's over a 90% failure rate. So my philosophy was to try and change this, and to
Hmm.
change this by fundamentally changing how we conduct research by doing research in advanced animal models, what I like to call advanced animal models. So these
Hmm.
highly outbred, very diverse populations of animals that share a lot of the environmental insults and injuries that we're exposed to as people, and and see if we can conduct the research in those animals, because
Hmm.
the idea being that since they so much better recapitulate the diseases that we experience as humans, that if we can find things that are successful in these animal models, these advanced translational animal models, that we would have a much higher success translating these, making that leap
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
the cats and the dogs to humans and
That
human
makes
clinical
sense.
trials. And so that we could have a lot more success in those clinical trials and make much more efficient use of those millions and millions of dollars that are being
Hmm.
invested into those clinical trials.
Hmm.
And so this is broadly recognized. So I got funding the University of Guelph had never received before that they were very proud of. For example, I was funded by the Terry Fox Research Institute. I
Right. I
also
saw that.
received,
Hmm.
yeah, and I received funding from the Canadian Breast Cancer Foundation. Interestingly, uh, one of the projects that I ran, it was the first ever clinical trial in animals that the Canadian Breast Cancer Foundation had ever funded. So, following that, the Terry Fox Research Institute recognized the value of this research program, and so they provided me with funding to then test some of my cancer immunotherapy ideas in the context of dogs with osteosarcomas. So that's bone cancer. And that's very interesting because dogs very just like people. So in fact, dogs. So one of the problems in terms of trying to do research as it relates to bone cancers in people is actually it's a relatively rare disease, a relatively rare cancer in people, but it's very common in dogs, in fact, and treated very
Mhm.
similarly. So you mentioned Terry Fox. Just like Terry Fox, as you might recall, he had to have one of his legs amputated, and typically
Right.
these bone cancers in the dogs present in one of their legs as well, and so they typically have to have one of their legs amputated. And what ends up killing these dogs almost always is the metastatic disease, and where it tends to spread by far the most often in dogs is the same as people, spreads to the lungs. And
Hmm.
ultimately, what these dogs will die from is metastatic cancer in the lungs. And that's exactly what killed Terry Fox, right? The
Hmm.
exact same disease
Hmm.
progression. It was when the bone cancer migrated into his lungs, right? That's ultimately what killed him as well. And so
Hmm.
the Terry Fox
Hmm.
Research Institute was very interested in this and recognized the value of doing this research. So yeah, that's been an exciting part and sort of foundation of my research program at the University of Guelph
Hmm.
for quite a few years now, and one that they've really publicized quite extensively.
So obviously, you're a very eminent scientist doing cutting edge research. One thing, a question I have, Dr. Bridle, for those of us who are lay people, is could you explain the relationship between the development of cancers in the body and the activity of the immune system? What's the relationship between immunology and cancer? Because for most people who don't understand medicine or what you do, those things don't seem to go together. But there's an explanation here, I sense. Could you provide that for us?
Yeah, thanks for asking that because you're right. Traditionally, in medicine, the role of the immune system was largely ignored, and yet it plays an incredibly foundational role in preventing cancers, in the development of
Mhm.
cancers, and in the treatment of cancers, as we've learned more recently. So this stems from the idea. So this is very interesting. This becomes very fundamental, and actually, in every introductory lecture I give in my immunology course to students, I always include this very topic that you just asked. Because, so for example, when I was trained in
Oh, great.
immunology,
So I'm on the
Leighton,
right track. That's good news.
absolutely. Yeah, it's very fundamental. See, when I was trained in immunology, I was taught that the immune system only responded to things that are foreign to the body, right? But now that's completely changed. We recognize that what the immune system responds to are things that are dangerous to the body. And that, importantly, can include dangerous self, right? Which would be cancer
Mhm.
cells. Cancer cells are derived from self. What cancer is, is a disease of dysregulated cell growth. It's when cells lose the shutoff switches, right? That control cell growth. And so they start proliferating
Mhm.
uncontrollably. That's when a cancer forms. That's a very dangerous scenario. And our immune system is capable of recognizing dangerous self and responding to it. So, this is the interesting thing we now understand. And I teach this as what's called the technical term, Leighton, would be called the immunoediting hypothesis. And I won't get into all the complex
Okay.
details here, right? But for a lay audience, what that essentially means is that the concept is this: many of us probably have had cancerous cells, especially as we get older. We may have had cancerous cells appear in our body, a few times. You and I may have had cancerous cells appear in our body, but we were never diagnosed with cancer. They never progressed to what we would call the clinical condition of cancer because our immune system did one of two things. It recognized those early cancerous cells as dangerous and either eliminated them from the body or drove those cells into what we call a state of equilibrium. So you can think of it like a teeter totter. So if the immune system
Mm,
wins, right,
right.
then you get elimination of the cancer cells, and the cancer cells are gone. And so those few cancer cells never progress to a large enough tumor, right, for it to become clinically relevant. So you never feel sick. Uh, and you never get diagnosed with the cancer, and those are removed. Now, if the battle between the
Hmm.
cancer cells and the immune system are about equal, right, that teeter totter stays even. And we call that a state of equilibrium, which means, for all we know, for example, you and I could potentially have a few cancer cells in our body right now, but if our immune system is keeping that in a state of equilibrium, again, they can't grow. Right, they can't grow to control. Their
Oh,
rate of cell
fascinating.
growth equals the ability of the immune system to kill those cells, and they don't grow, they don't progress, and therefore we
Hmm.
never reach the point
Hmm.
of a clinically relevant case of cancer.
Hmm.
So technically, when a cancer grows, progresses to the point where somebody starts feeling ill as a result of it, right? And physicians can use their diagnostic technology to diagnose it as a cancer. Technically, by definition, for that tumor to have reached that point, it had to have been able to find ways to evade the immune system, because their immune system is very good at finding these cells and getting rid of them. So, technically speaking,
Right. Right.
every clinical case of a cancer is one in which that cancer has developed what we call immunoevasive properties. So, you can
Mm.
see the immune system plays a foundational role in preventing, getting rid of these cancer cells before it can even be diagnosed as a cancer, or controlling their growth before it can be diagnosed as a cancer, or again, it applies pressure, a selective pressure that dictates the very nature of the cancers that end up developing in people, right? The immune system has become a critical consideration for every aspect of cancer therapy now. It's really quite
Hmm.
fascinating.
Hmm.
And then, of course, the other
It
one that's
is.
interesting is just the whole milieu of new tools. And the reason why I get excited about immunotherapy is this. Think about when you and I get an infection, right? We get a cold. Our immune system is very good at getting rid of that virus, right? Let's say you or I, we will have had colds over our lives. Let's say it's caused by a rhinovirus, right?
Sure.
You get a minor cold, the virus gets removed from the body by the immune system, you recover, you're fine, right? You don't have all kinds of off target damage, right? We don't live the rest of our lives with terrible side effects and disabilities, right, from that. Um, Unlike somebody maybe who's been treated with chemotherapy, right, extensive chemotherapy regimen. And the
Hmm.
reason is because our immune system is designed to respond with exquisite, and in immunology we like to use the term exquisite specificity, right?
Mm.
That's the hallmark. We call it the hallmark of an immune response, is exquisite specificity. It's able to target and remove dangerous things from the body without causing too much overt harm to the normal cells in the body, right? That's why we're able to recover from minor infections all the
Hmm.
time and suffer no ill long-term consequences. And that's what I get excited about with cancers, because everybody knows that with traditional cancer therapies, they are very blunt tools. And
Yeah.
there is all kinds of horrible side effects associated with
Hmm.
it. So I
Hmm.
see in the future the possibility of harnessing the power of the immune system to, with great specificity, and because of its inherent potency, right, effectively eliminate cancers from people's body without all of the horrific long-term side effects that are associated with traditional therapies.
Very, very interesting.